So this is how Group A stands after the second round of group matches. Russia are top on goal difference. Uruguay also on 6 points, so they go through. But in what order? Well, that won't be decided until next Monday. Uruguay taking on the host Russia, and Saudi Arabia take on Egypt. But both those countries are now out of the World Cup. They have one more match to play, but it's pretty meaningless at this stage. They'll be playing for pride alone. Very interesting game, but as Ger said, not the most entertaining match we've seen at this World Cup, Eamon. And I think it's an extraordinarily high-risk strategy that Uruguay employ. But is it because, Eamon, they're limited in terms of the way they can go about these games, that they're playing to their strengths and that's it?
Yeah, I think they should have expected and looked for a bit more. You need a second goal, no matter who you're playing. And they didn't really go after that second goal with any conviction. I think they felt comfortable at the back, and Saudis were really out of the depth. They play in their own local league, and you're up against Cavani, Suarez, Godin, Jimenez, Betancourt, who plays for Juventus. He played in midfield. You wouldn't have known he was a Juventus player. I think it's the way, the mentality, the Uruguayans, we see them in the World Cups a lot. The mentality is, first of all, don't give away a goal.
They grind out results.
Yeah, it's very Italian, and it's also very Atletico Madrid, where the captain and leader, Godin, comes from. So it's what they are. Now, they will be happy because they go to play Russia, the host nation, and they can top the group. And I think it'll be a really interesting match between them and Russia. But it's a big step up for Russia after playing Saudis, Egypt last night. Now they got to play Uruguay, and that will be, I'd make Uruguay favourites in that game. So for their coach, mission accomplished.
Yeah, I suppose we shouldn't be surprised with the result, Kevin, because I was just checking the stats there, and 7 out of the last 8 Uruguay wins at World Cup have been 1-0 victory, so that's what they do, isn't it?
Yeah, you know, I sat here, this is my second game for the World Cup. The first one was Uruguay, Egypt, and the game tonight, and they're making it feel like hard work.
Playing was a lot better, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly, you know. We're looking for clips to pull out on them in the second half. We thought Saudi Arabia would have to, you know, to stay in the World Cup, they had to attack. They didn't do it in the second half. They didn't come out of their shell. So Uruguay didn't have to do anything either. They just sat there and were happy. They let Saudi Arabia get to, you know, 3/4 of the way up the pitch and then just got the ball back off. And, you know, there was no threat. It never looked like.
Was it that simple in your eyes?
It really was, you know. And Uruguay, there was no urgency. They didn't seem like they needed to have any urgency, in fairness, but you know, they were never panicked. They weren't dealing with, you know, balls, big high balls at the end, or, you know, throwing everyone up the end into the box from Saudi Arabia. I was disappointed how they just went out with such a damn squib. Saudi Arabia, it was just so, you know, you'd think it was just a friendly game the way to finish that.
If you come in with 15 minutes to go, turn on the telly, turn off the sound and remove the scoreline from the screen and said one of those teams is 1-0 down and needs to score to stay in the World Cup, there would be no indication that it's Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
There was
because the draw would have kept the tournament alive for them.
They're in it then. You never know what's going to happen in the next game, but they needed something today. So, the level they play at is inferior. Technical ability is obviously inferior as well. But you can bridge the gap so many ways by your attitude, your intensity, how you go about the game. And there was no sign of any of that today. There was no urgency. There was no intensity. They weren't looking like they were busting their gut towards the end of the game to do anything different to try and change the course of the game. It just looked like they just meandered to losing, and that was it.
Okay, and Damien, it's still intriguing me that I suppose players at this level can be that controlled, that they know the situation in the game, and they felt really under no threat from Saudi Arabia.
I think you gave the statistic, last 7 of their last 8 games, they've won 1-0 in the World Cup. Atletico Madrid, who have 2 central defenders in that team, they kind of win that way. And Richie was wondering why they didn't throw the kitchen sink at them, which is a good point. They haven't got a kitchen sink. And you need players, you know, to really. It's true. What can you do? You can't throw the dishcloth.
Show something. Show a bit of desperation. Yeah, I know you can invent quality during a match that's not there.
The left back, Al-Shirani, is their best player.
And maybe they don't have the belief either, Eamon, do they?
Well, it's like when you're out of your league, and they are. You can only do so much, and they passed it neatly. But about 40 yards, 45 yards out from goal, then the Uruguayans started to get after them and win the ball. So they let them play it up. It was pretty stuff. And then they shut them down. And that was the pattern. It isn't good enough from Uruguay's point of view because one goal is not enough of a lead. But when you think about it, did the Uruguayan keeper have a serious save to make in the whole game? No. Did Godin or Jimenez have to do anything serious in the game? No. And it's just a fact that they didn't have the equipment. A winger, the left back is a very good player, Al-Shirani, and played well against Russia as well. He might have got forward more, you would think, but they didn't have the skill to deliver if he did go forward. And I think in their context, 1-0 against Uruguay is a good result. They've nothing to be ashamed about. They got a hiding the other night by the host nation, Russia. So I don't think, given where they're coming from, there should be anything to be ashamed of.
I think that's the key point. I think on paper, the reaction and the criticism, the public criticism, the political comments at home, the managers come out and said, it was shameful what happened in the first game. So I think they probably went into this thinking they wanted to avoid a repeat of that, and it was almost in their heads damage limitation beforehand, because on paper a 1-0 defeat to a team with the history of Uruguay and the individuals of Uruguay isn't a bad outcome for a team that took a pace in the opening night by 5-0. So maybe that fed into their flatness in the second half, which is really difficult for our sporting culture to understand, where you just think you've only a goal and you're still in the tournament, so change how you play, show some bit of a change in your attitude, but not for the Saudis. No,
and that's the way they go about their business. What has kind of surprised me, Kevin, is, they invested an awful lot of money, as I said, in the team. There was a concerted effort to get them to the World Cup. They hoped they would do better than they've done. They sent, I think it was 9 of their players into the Spanish league, and that was a complete failure because I don't think any of them got any real game time. So they've made errors along the way despite the investment.
Yeah, they looked neat and tidy, in fairness. They kept the ball. They probably had as much possession, I'm not sure, but, without ever threatening. But, when you see after that first game, the reaction, when your Minister of Sport is coming out saying there's going to be repercussions, how could you go out with without a massive fear factor, without being stuck in your shell, without wanting to make that run into the box and leave yourself exposed? So, it's psychologically, for that to come out after the first game, it's ruined them today. I know they've performed on paper better today or whatever and kept it to 1-0, but after those comments coming out, you could never see them trying stuff, taking people on, having the confidence to do stuff that will get them to go.
Yeah, and it was 53% possession they had, but statistics can be misleading. In that case, it wasn't significant possession because Uruguay were allowing them the possession, Eamon, weren't they?
They were, they were confident and they knew where to draw the line, where to defend. They didn't press. We were thinking during the game, if they'd have pressed Saudi Arabia and won the ball early off them, they didn't feel the need to do that, and they won't do that against whoever they play. They're in a position now where if they beat Russia, they top the group, and that's the way the Uruguayan mentality is. They're cautious, and they're happy enough. The other thing about the Saudis, they've lost 2-1 in a friendly to Germany, who were and are defending this tournament, the world champions. That's a good result. They lost 1-0 to Uruguay in the context of what they're trying to do, which is develop the game in that country. That's not a bad result. And
they've probably got Qatar in mind rather than maybe Russia 2018.
And they want self-respect. And they were beaten, they were hammered by the hosts. That's the sort of black spot. That's the problem, and that's the humiliation they had to recover from. But Kevin said, for them, after 5-0 pasting, 1-0 against Uruguay, OK, we'll take it.
Yeah, so not too bad on their part, but they're out of the tournament. It's Uruguay who march on. So we're going to have a look at Luis Suarez's goal. Nice for him that he scored on his 100th international cap.
Yeah, for all the quality that players like Cavani and Suarez can bring to a team, this is an alarmingly easy goal, easy opportunity created by really, really bad defending here by Al Jassam. We highlighted him at half-time, spoke about him here. He just gets too caught up in trying to have a wrestle or a fight with Suarez and put Suarez off. He'd been far better placed just to stand, face the ball and head it clear. Suarez wouldn't have had the opportunity just to pass the ball into an empty get. The goalkeeper obviously doesn't get a free pass here either. Alaouais completely misjudges it, comes out off his line, gets nowhere near it. So 2 individual errors from 2 players, which was a gift for Suarez.
There was nothing quite to match that in the second half, Richie, but they had a couple of reasonable attacks. Sanchez's header from Cavani, but what else was there from that second half?
We picked out 2 or 3 moments. I mean, again, we were sitting here willing on a bit more intensity and urgency. I keep using that word intensity from Uruguay, but Cavani has a chance here. Sanchez gets forward. He didn't do that too often, but it's just blocked by Al-Sawi there on that occasion. Cavani here returns the favour. Sanchez arrives late in the box, in the back stick. Cavani does have to wait a little while to get support up to him, but heads over the bar. There was a little flurry of more activity when Laxalt and Torreira came on. Torreira here gets an opportunity to shoot from distance outside the box, and when I first saw this I thought it was just a deflection from Cavani, but he actually does try to redirect the shot with his head, shown very good reaction and nearly guided it towards a goal. But they did enough. They did enough. On paper it's 2 clean sheets, 2 1-0 wins. They're through to the next round with a game to spare, and the last group game is just about whether they top the group or not.
Yeah,
so on paper, like, it's
job done.
It's all you'd ask for.
Yeah, this package, Eamon, is going to highlight some of the Saudi weaknesses.
Yeah, it shows the way Uruguay went about it. They passed the ball well. Technically, they're okay. And the Saudis are now in the area of the field, in their own half, where they're prepared to defend and put pressure on the ball. They let them move it around, but they're not going anywhere from here. And you'll see what happens in a moment. They give it out wide. That's it. Everything's covered. And Godin and Jimenez are in the box. They're going nowhere from there. And it was that inability to find a cutting-edge pass. But look at the box. There's only 2 white shirts there, and there's 6 blue shirts. So they have them under control, and they let them pass that all day in front of them. And there's no danger. And that was quite close to the end, when I think we were hoping for gung-ho, and they end up knocking the ball out of play. It's inexperience and naivety, and it's also, again, in that area of the field, the Uruguayans come and win the ball. So they always knew they could win it back and defend and get numbers behind the ball as well. I mean, Suarez came back and worked. Cavani came back and worked. He's in shot there. And this is what Uruguay do. They frustrate you, and it's easier. Now we have to see they've frustrated better teams than Saudi Arabia in the past in these championships, and they're a wily lot. But I think they're short of quality in their own way.
Yeah, and they'll face a very stiff test in the round of 16,
one
way or another. It'll be Portugal or Spain.
But no one will want to draw them.
Yeah, they'll be difficult opponents.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit more about Saudi Arabia, and maybe all the work hasn't been totally wasted, because we do see some good passages of play from them. And Kevin, this is probably the reel that we'll send to the Saudi sports minister. This is the good play from Saudi Arabia.
You know, they string a few passes together. This is what we wanted to see at the end of the second half. Hatan cutting in here and having a good shot, but you know, we're pulling this out. It's easy for the keeper just to palm over the bar, but this is what we're working with from Saudi. They look neat and tight, they were organised. You know, they do have something to build on going forward. I think we want to see more of this near the end of the game, getting it wide, getting the ball into the box. You know, put a few people in there, you don't know what's going to happen. As you see here, Godin's missed it, and Hatan, you know, came at him very quick. Maybe he'd want to have done better. You know, here in the second half, it's a breakaway. You know, it takes a while to get there, but people aren't flooding forward. You know, we're pulling out a clip here. It's slow. You see 3 people in the picture. They're 1-0 down, and they end up, you know, running into a blind alley, winning a free kick. But that's what we had to pull out in the second half for them. You know, you see that cross in the first half. Do that in the last fight. They had chances when they got it wide near the end of the second half. We're saying, get people in the box, cross it. Anything can happen, as you see time and time again in football, and they just didn't seem to want to do it.
No.